We move tonight. Let no one stand in our way.
History is rife, with tales of brothers clashing over crowns, their bonds shattered by the allure of absolute power, where familial loyalty crumbles under the weight of ambition and the promise of eternal glory. Yet few rivalries burn as fiercely as those that not only tear apart families, but reshape entire nations, leaving behind echoes of blood, betrayal, and unyielding ambition that resonate across generations like the distant rumble of thunder over the African savanna. But what of the betrayers who rise from the fray, those shadowy figures who lurk in the peripheries of power? The hidden hands in royal lineages, armed with cunning intellect, unshakable resolve, and a willingness to forge destinies from the smoldering ashes of their own kin. In the epic saga of the indomitable Zulu empires, a realm built on the clash of spears, the roar of impies, and the unyielding spirit of a people forged in fire, the most infamous betrayer was a prince shrouded in the mists of intrigue and calculation. Born into a storm of familial rivalries and political machinations, he emerged from the shadows to become the unchallenged sovereign, bending every ancient tradition and unwritten law in his volatile, ever-shifting realm. His name was Dingane, kaSenzangakhona, a name that evokes both awe and condemnation in the annals of African history. He was the consummate usurper, a prince who all but single-handedly dismantled his family's sacred throne and claimed it for himself, sustaining and attempting to expand a vast domain through unyielding strategy, ruthless decisions, and a vision that blended pragmatism with peril. That throne, steeped in legend and drenched in the blood of conquests, belonged to none other than Shaka Zulu, the warrior king whose name still thunders through time. But the same shrewd, opportunistic intellect that propelled Dingane to topple Shaka, the architect of the Zulus' meteoric rise, is also blamed for igniting the flames of his own cataclysmic fall, a downfall marked by foreign invasions, internal rebellions, and the inexorable tide of colonial encroachment. So how does a betrayer find himself betrayed? His once iron grip on power slipping like fine sand through clenched fists, eroded by the very forces he sought to control. This is the story of Dingane, the man who snatched a kingdom from the jaws of tyranny, only to watch it crumble amid the thunder of invading drums, the crack of rifles, and the whispers of fate's cruel irony. As we delve into this tale, we'll uncover the layers of ambition, survival, and tragedy that defined one of Africa's most complex rulers, a figure whose actions continue to spark debate among historians, storytellers, and descendants alike. Our narrative unfolds in the late 18th century, beneath the sun-scorched rolling hills of KwaZulu, a landscape painted in hues of golden grass, swaying under endless blue skies, where the Zulu clan hammered out its fate under the iron-fisted rule of King kaSenzangakhona Kajama. The air hummed with the distant lowing of vast cattle herds, the lifeblood of Zulu wealth and status, and the rhythmic thud of spears in rigorous training sessions, a world where alliances between clans shifted like the unpredictable winds sweeping across the vast savanna, carrying scents of acacia blooms and the earthy promise of rain. This was a time of transformation for the Zulu people, a small Nguni clan nestled among dozens of others in what is now modern-day South Africa, navigating a complex web of intertribal politics, cattle raids, and the ever-present threat of drought or famine. Society was rigidly patriarchal, with power flowing through male lineages, where chiefs and kings held sway over kraals, circular enclosures of thatched huts surrounded by thorn fences, and decisions were made in Nkundla assemblies under the shade of ancient trees. Customs dictated everything from marriage alliances to warfare strategies, with ancestor spirits invoked through rituals involving beer offerings and divinations by Izangoma healers. It was into this vibrant yet precarious world that Dingane entered the stage around 1795, one of several sons born to kaSenzangakhona, in a royal household tangled with the whispers of succession, sibling rivalries, and the subtle undercurrents of court intrigue that could turn a whisper into a war cry. As a young prince, Dingane grew up immersed in the traditions of his people, learning the art of stick fighting to hone his warrior skills, participating in age-set regiments that bonded boys into lifelong comrades, and absorbing the oral histories recited by griots around evening fires, stories that glorified past kings and warned of the perils of disunity. He observed with keen eyes, as his half-brother Shaka, born of a scandalous union and initially cast aside as illegitimate, clawed his way from the humiliation of banishment to become a legend in his own time. Shaka's innovations in warfare were revolutionary. He discarded the long-throwing spears of old for the short, stabbing ikeowa, named for the sucking sound it made when withdrawn from flesh, and devised the bullhorn formation, where flanking horns encircled enemies while the chest delivered the crushing blow. Dingane pledged fealty at first, charging into Shaka's relentless Mfecane campaigns, the crushing or scattering, a period of intense upheaval from around 1,815 to 1,840 that displaced millions like storm-tossed leaves across southern Africa's vast plains, redrawing maps through conquest, migration, and devastation. These wars, fueled by population pressures, drought, and Shaka's insatiable drive for expansion, saw the Zulu absorb or annihilate rival clans, amassing a territory that stretched from the Drakensberg Mountains to the Indian Ocean. Dingane fought valiantly in these battles, his spear tasting blood in skirmishes against the Ndwandwe and others, earning him respect as a capable commander. Yet, as Shaka's profound sorrow over his beloved mother Nandi's death in 1827 twisted into a tyrannical despotism outlawing harvests for a year of mourning, slaughtering thousands accused of insufficient grief under a sky heavy with foreboding clouds and the wails of the bereaved, Dingane scented vulnerability in the gathering clouds of discontent that hung over the kingdom like a pall. The once unifying king had become a source of terror, his edicts leading to starvation and unrest, whispers of rebellion flickering like embers in dry grass. Dingane's ambition, sharp as an assegai's edge and tempered by years of observation, began to stir, foreshadowing the blade that would one day turn inward, a subtle shift that marked the beginning of his transformation from loyal brother to calculated opportunist. By 1828, Shaka's suspicions had poisoned even his most trusted inner circle, the royal kraal at Dukuza, echoing with the paranoia of a ruler who saw enemies in every shadow, his once brilliant mind fractured by grief and isolation. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Guards patrolled ceaselessly. Diviners cast bones to uncover plots, and the air carried the acrid scent of fear mingled with the smoke from perpetual fires. Dingane, now a seasoned prince in his 30s, allied with his siblings Malangana and the cunning aide Mbofa Kasathai, weaving their scheme in hushed tones amid the flickering firelight of secret meetings held under the cover of night, when the stars wheeled overhead like silent witnesses. Mbofa, Shaka's ostensibly loyal advisor who had risen through the ranks by flattery and guile, played his part masterfully, luring the king into a false sense of security during a routine inspection near the cattle enclosures. Then, in a flash of calculated violence, Dingane and Malangana lunged with their assegais, the short spears glinting in the midday sun as they pierced the king's body. Shaka, the unparalleled warfare titan who had revolutionized Zulu tactics and built an empire from a modest clan, succumbed to the very weapon he had forged into an icon of Zulu might, his final gasps echoing the irony of his downfall. His lifeless form was unceremoniously hurled into a desolate grain pit, the earth swallowing the legend under a merciless moon that cast long shadows over the kraal. Dingane wasted no moment in consolidating his victory. He swiftly dispatched Malangana in a cold-blooded elimination to erase any potential rival claimants, ensuring no shared power diluted his authority. Ascending the throne with the tacit nod and perhaps quiet encouragement of his aunt Makabayi Kajama, the shadowy architect of crowns, whose political acumen had shaped multiple Zulu successions, Dingane stepped into the role of king. Makabayi, a figure of immense influence who had navigated the patriarchal structures with unparalleled skill, saw in Dingane a stabilizing force after Shaka's chaos, though her endorsement came with the weight of her own ambitions for the dynasty's survival. Dingane's dawn as king shimmered with promise. A brief era of respite after the storm of Shaka's tyranny, where the Zulu people dared to hope for a return to balance. He softened Shaka's draconian edicts with deliberate reforms, permitting weddings that had been forbidden, lightening the burdensome military conscriptions that had drained the nation's youth, and allowing the kraals to come alive once more with the joyous sounds of songs, dances, and communal feasts under the warm glow of African sunsets. Cattle herds grew fat again on the pastures, and the rhythm of daily life, women grinding mealies, men tending fields, children learning warrior ways, resumed with a semblance of normalcy. Dingane established his capital at Gungunlovu, a sprawling kraal complex designed in the shape of an oval, with his royal huts at the center surrounded by regiments of warriors, symbolizing both protection and control. He promoted trade with neighboring clans, amassing ivory and hides to exchange for beads and metal, fostering a fragile prosperity. Yet, even as the kingdom breathed easier, horizons darkened with ominous portents. The Voortrekker settlers, Dutch-descended Boers fleeing British rule in the Cape Colony, rolled their wagons northward in the Great Trek, creaking under the weight of colonial dreams and armed with muskets that spat fire and death. These intruders encroached on Zulu pastures, their oxen trampling sacred grazing lands, their rifles glinting like predators' eyes in the harsh sunlight, heralding a clash of worlds between indigenous sovereignty and European expansionism. In early 1838, Dingane entered into tense negotiations with Boer chief Piet Retief, a stern leader whose party sought land concessions in exchange for recovering stolen Zulu cattle from rival tribes. The talks unfolded in Gungunlovu's great enclosure, scented with the yeasty aroma of traditional beer and the underlying tang of mutual suspicion, as interpreters bridged the linguistic divide. Dingane, ever the pragmatist, initially agreed to cede territory along the Tugela River, but distrust boiled over like a pot left too long on the fire. Retief's demands seemed insatiable, and rumors of Boer alliances with Zulu enemies fueled paranoia. At a ceremonial gathering meant to seal the pact, Zulu warriors, hidden among the dancers and drummers, pounced with lethal precision, executing Retief and his 70 companions as perceived threats to Zulu autonomy, their cries lost in the cacophony of war. Whoops. This act of defiance ignited the Weenen massacre, named for the weeping that followed. Zulu impis, elite regiments trained in Shaka's unforgiving methods, stormed Boer lagers at dawn, blades flashing in the first light, cries piercing the morning mist like arrows, claiming over 500 lives, men, women, and children in a whirlwind of retribution that stained the grasslands red and sowed seeds of enduring enmity. The Boers, hardened by generations of frontier life and fueled by a covenant with their god, struck back with a vengeance forged in the smithies of steel and resolve. In December 1838, at the infamous Battle of Blood River, Andries Pretorius, a commanding figure with a strategist, mindled a mere 464 Voortrekkers against an overwhelming force of 10 Nul Zulu warriors. Their ox wagons circled into an impregnable logger formation, a fortress of interlocking firepower and unyielding faith. The Boers had vowed victory in a pre-battle prayer, promising to commemorate the day of triumphant, their positions reinforced with thorn bushes and chains. As the Zulu impis charged at dawn, waves upon waves crashing like a human tide, bullets tore through their ranks with devastating accuracy, the acrid smoke of gunpowder mingling with the metallic scent of blood. Spears clattered harmlessly against wagon sides, warriors falling in heaps as the disciplined volleys cut them down. Over 3-0 Zulu lay slain by day's end, the Encombe River's waters churning crimson with their lifeblood, forever earning its grim moniker as a testament to the slaughter. Dingane's legions, shattered like brittle clay, retreating in disarray as Pretorius's men emerged unscathed, their victory attributed to divine intervention. The Zulu capital at Gungunlovu was soon engulfed in flames, the thatched roofs crackling and collapsing in an inferno that lit the night sky like omens of impending doom, sending plumes of smoke skyward as symbols of a kingdom's fragility in the face of modern weaponry. Broken yet unbowed, Dingane retreated northward through rugged terrain, the dust of defeat choking his path and the wails of his people echoing in his ears, only to collide with the treacherous uprising led by his half-brother Mpande, who had forged an opportunistic alliance with the victorious Boers. Mpande, long overshadowed and harboring grievances from Shaka's era, rallied disaffected Zulu factions, promising stability and an end to ceaseless wars. At the pivotal 1840 Battle of Makonko, fought amid the undulating hills near the Black Umfolozi River, Mpande's coalition, bolstered by Boer firearms and Zulu defectors, crushed Dingane's dwindling remnants in a chaos of clashing shields, guttural war cries, and the thunderous reports of muskets. Warriors grappled in hand-to-hand combat, assegais thrusting and parrying under a relentless sun, the ground turning to mudslick with sweat and blood. Dingane's forces, demoralized by prior losses and internal divisions, faltered and fled, leaving their king exposed. Desperate, Dingane escaped to the borders of Swaziland, seeking refuge among allied clans, but betrayal followed him like a persistent shadow. Nyawa warriors, possibly acting on Mpande's orders or their own vendettas, ambushed and assassinated him, his body left abandoned to the scavengers of the wild, a degrading, ignominious curtain call for a Zulu monarch who had once commanded the respect and fear of thousands. Dingane's enigma endures through the centuries, a paradox woven into the fabric of Zulu history. A fleeting guardian of Zulu independence who briefly halted the empire's slide into chaos, yet the unwitting catalyst for its accelerated erosion through kin-slaying, misjudged alliances, and ill-fated battles that invited colonial predators. To some historians and Zulu nationalists, he's an anti-colonial beacon, a fierce defender who defied the encroaching European tides with unyielding resolve. His execution of Retief seen as a necessary strike against imperialism that foreshadowed later resistance movements, like the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. Oral traditions, passed down through generations in Isibongo praise poems recited at ceremonies, paint him as both a valiant protector and a tragic destroyer, his choices forming a bulwark against invasion that ultimately cracked under pressure, inviting ruin like a dam breached by relentless floods. To others, particularly Boer descendants and some Western chroniclers, he's a scheming despot, a treacherous usurper whose betrayals sowed the seeds of fragmentation and weakened the Zulu at a critical juncture, his massacres condemned as barbaric acts that justified colonial retribution. Modern scholars debate his motivations. Was his pragmatism a survival strategy in a world of shifting sands, or a veil for raw ambition? In today's context, Dingane's story resonates with themes of sovereignty, resistance, and the complexities of leadership in the face of colonialism, inspiring reflections on how indigenous rulers navigated the onslaught of European expansion. His legacy is etched in landmarks like Blood River, now a heritage site where annual commemorations blend Zulu and Afrikaner narratives, and in literature, films, and academic works that explore the Mfekene's ripple effects on Southern Africa's demographic landscape. What do you see in Dingane's enduring shadow? Was he merely circumstance's pawn, buffeted by the winds of history, or the masterful designer of his own downfall, his choices a chain reaction of hubris and necessity? Drop your insights in the comments below, and let's unpack this layered history together. If these gripping sagas of African betrayals, resilience, and the unyielding human spirit keep you wide-eyed through the night, pondering the twists of fate that shape empires, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell for more unearthed chronicles from the continent's beating heart. Your engagement fuels our mission to illuminate these often overlooked stories, bridging past and present. Thanks for joining the journey. Until next time, stay curious about the shadows of history.